It's time. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the August 1st, 2022 Design Review Committee meeting to order. For the record, I can see that both committee members are on Zoom, and staff is present either on Zoom or in person. And could I get either committee member? All right, so thank you. And it is 3 o'clock. On the nose. Are there any changes to the agenda?
None by staff.
None by staff?
Nope.
And none by the committee either. The first actionable item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which contains the July 18th minutes.
I don't have any changes, so I would move to approve them as written.
We'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then the next item on the agenda is design review fiscal year 2022, number 13, Casey Kispert with Jackson, Maine, requesting a new multifamily mixed-use construction development at 506 and 510 East 44th Street and 515 East 45th Street. I do see that Casey Kispert is online. And are you presenting today?
Yes, I will cover the presentation.
Thank you. I'll hand the meeting over to you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity for us to come back and discuss the last few remaining topics for this project. In our July 18th meeting, there were 3 concerns that were brought up. Number 1 was the planting along the greenbelt. 2 was location of dog run facilities, which was brought forth through public comment. And 3rd was the South Building residential entrance along 44th Street. So we'll go through and address those 3 topics here, and I'll share my screen. Okay. So the first topic of concern was discussion regarding the treatment of the open space between the North Building and the Greenbelt Trail. It was noted that the existing tree canopy provided some benefit to the trail through shade. It was also noted that there was not a clear developed plan or understanding for this area. So we made some revisions. The first revision, we incorporated large canopy trees along the south side of the Greenbelt. As evidenced here, we have class 2 trees that range up to 50 feet and 35 feet and 35 feet in mature height, located along the building side of the Greenbelt. Low shrubs are planted intermittently with some grasses to provide a buffer between the Greenbelt and the project itself. And we are still maintaining sight lines from the building to the trail along with some additional connection points. So not to obscure the project entirely or cut off all visibility to and through the Greenbelt Trail. It was also noted, I'd like to note that the north side of the Greenbelt, or Plan North on this case, the Boise River side, there's no action on that side under this application. Anything that would be done on that side regarding cleaning up of existing trees would be in coordination with the Army Corps of Engineers. So we do not have any adjustments to that plan at this moment under this application. Second item I would like to address is location of the dog run facility as noted in the project. That facility is located between the North Building and the South Building, internal to the site and away from our primary gathering areas, given the specified use. That facility, as noted here, is approximately 75 feet by 25 feet long and is in a generally secluded area. The third item we would like to address is the South Building entrance. I'll walk through a few slides which show the previous design proposal and the current design proposal. As shown here is the proposal that we had on the 7/18 meeting that has been revised to provide a more distinct residential building entrance here. As you can see, the brick mass has been lowered down to a more pedestrian scale that differentiates away from a lot of the storefront that we have around the building, around the other retail components. The main vertical datum is brought to the ground with some signage in this view. If I continue on to an aerial view of that showing the same concept. So the massing has been decreased significantly for that portion. And also providing connection points on 44th as well as internal to the site where we have a plaza outside there. And this new building entrance provides a much more distinct visual cue for residents of the facility. It provides some additional lighting that matches the characteristic of the building and allows for a much more clear, distinct visual access for that differentiates from the other corners of the building. So with that, I'd be happy to pass that along.
Any questions for Mr. Kispert?
I just have one question on the other entrance into that. What is that other entrance? Is it just a kind of a secondary entrance?
Are we talking about right-hand side or left-hand side of this graphic?
Well, the
here?
right-hand side, you said on the previous slide that there was actually two entrances into that residential component.
Yeah, so the primary leasing entrance is going to be on this side, and this would be a secondary back of house entrance for residents.
Gotcha.
And while you're on that slide, the kind of, let's call it brown, there's kind of the brown corner, and then there's the white center there to the left where it says F. In the previous version, we kind of had the brown extended down maybe 2/3 of the way on the white, but not full height. What was the reasoning for cutting that back?
I can jump back.
Yeah.
So one was to primarily reduce that brick mass. It was providing that sort of storefront appearance, and we really wanted to pare that down. As a result, it did open up some additional field of this white area where we will have some additional treatment that wasn't fully articulated here with some canopies and such indicating additional access points for the bike facility.
So what is occurring at the lower level there of the F component where the brick was pulled back? Is that still retail, commercial space in there, or what is it?
That is not. That would be per plan right now. That would be bike storage, bike parking primarily.
Okay.
So more I call them back of house entrances. Don't want to bring our bicycles through that main entry, and then that would have internal circulation that would lead you to the main entry lobby.
If there are no further questions, I'll turn it over to staff if staff has anything to add.
No, staff doesn't.
All right, and then since there's no staff, no need for a staff report. Is there anybody either present here with us or online who wishes to provide testimony on this matter? Those of you who are online, please either utilize the raise your hand feature or just speak up. All right. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Kispert, if you have anything else that you would like to address.
I don't believe we have anything further we'd like to address at this time. I hope that the moves that we've made here have helped reduce the scale, provide that clear pedestrian entrance. And as we continue to develop our design for some of those accessory entrances, we just want to make sure that this cornerstone element is providing the guidance that was requested in the last meeting.
Thank you. And I'll close the public testimony or the public hearing and turn it over to the committee for discussion.
Thoughts, Derek?
Yeah, I don't have any issues with how it's laid out. I think it works to highlight that residential entry better than the previous version. So I'm okay moving forward that as shown.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the effort here to really distinguish the identity for that the residential piece makes it's quite a bit of an improvement, I feel. Just kind of a little looking at that the plaza component there in front of that residential, just trying to get a feel for pedestrian circulation and what's happening and how most of these people are coming from, maybe some of the guest parking and so forth on the guess what would be it's the left hand side if you're approaching the entry, where basically where all that kind of that storefront element was previously, where there was some treatment down at that lower level, kind of bringing that multi-story facade, kind of humanizing some of that the bottom portion there. And that's not there anymore. I get it, it's bike storage. I'm just trying to understand how much actual connectivity needs to occur or might be occurring there. And whether the removal of all that treatment at that lower level to kind of bring the scale of that down might
Yeah, maybe. I think Casey mentioned some awnings and stuff and some.
I think it
additional-
needs something like that along that large, we'll call it the large white portion
Right,
left of the entry.
right. It sounded like, yeah, there was a specific bike entry facade there, or a bike entry pathway there. So that might be articulated with some awnings or some different treatment. That was kind of alluded to or said, so I imagine that to be the case.
Well, maybe we can have a little more. Casey, can we get you to elaborate on that maybe?
Absolutely. And I'll share my screen real quick. I'm going to pull up the landscape plan as it provides some clarity as to the area that we're talking about. So as you had mentioned, some of the concern about coming through this way, is that the initial sort of path to travel. Yeah, so we do have, and I'll just kind of add to the point here, we do have a pretty strong connection between the buildings through here. However, our primary access point is along here to get to that north building. But coming from this way, you can see we do have some doors shown on the site plan here, which will allude to a back of house egress as well as a bicycle entrance. We'd be happy to incorporate some lower level canopies, maybe some additional change in material at that lower level to provide some visual distinction as well. We still are in process of developing that plaza area out there and what it might look like. But I think there's plenty of identifiers, such as some awnings, lighting, as well as on-site cues to put that down there. We have to include some temporary bike racks out front, things like that can help, provide the visual or the notification of what that entry is. I will admit it is additionally a secondary or third entry option. Our primary entry option is the one that we've highlighted here. So we do not necessarily feel that there needs to be a tremendous amount of dressing, but we can certainly incorporate some canopies. I know I've said that several times, but some canopies and relative bike related items to highlight that entry.
Because on this landscape plan, the build out component around the revised main entry does not reflect the model of what you're doing, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, the base map wasn't updated in that short time.
Okay. No, I think I would just like to see maybe a condition there that some additional treatment there at the pedestrian level at that that entrance be incorporated, and I'll leave it up to. It's nothing that I think we need to see. I think staff can review and determine that some effort's been made there, and I think that's enough for me.
Me too.
And on the other items that were addressed, I think I'm completely fine with. So I would move to approve with that added condition on the additional treatment, and then staff's conditions as drafted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. And the next item on the agenda is a public hearing for design review fiscal year 2022, number 17. We have Michael McHugh with Pivot North Designs requesting a modification, or excuse me, requesting a new mixed use construction associated with the Casino Beach subdivision at 318 East 34th Street.
You wanting me to just jump right in on this one, or the staff?
Yes.
Okay.
You're free to jump right in. Thank you.
Okay. So based on our, I guess, pre-app meeting with DR, the main ones that came out to mind were some of the things that, let's see, fences and walls, the parking, the connection to a public way or sidewalk. So let me share my screen. Package. I think we provided some additional comments or responses to some of the staff report comments. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at those.
Yeah, was there any other revised drawings that were provided?
I submitted a new set of drawings for it, but that's, yes, there were. So it shows what's up on the screen here in terms of providing kind of an access allocation of.
I'm not seeing your share.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. Got it now?
I think it might be coming up. There it is. Okay.
Yeah. So this was the revised site plan, and I believe Hanna Ball will probably be, or Will or Darian from Stack Rock will probably be discussing some of another one of the big items for discussion is the connection to the Thurman Mill kind of access all the way to 35th. And this this site plan is not as current, as there's been a lot of discussion with property owners and the other elements that are not particularly on this property, but are very important to this connection. So I will let them speak to that specifically. But this more talks to just kind of along Palapa Lane, which is, for lack of a better word, kind of a private drive that takes you to this building on lot 15, which is the project we're currently discussing, and providing from that main entrance, which is here at the recess element. And again, the idea is, you think of like Mission Beach in California, the idea of Casino Beach is, pretty dense, but tight walkability and elements. So you're kind of going back, it's highlighted, but I would say that the access is highlighted via, some paving. And again, landscape could probably talk to specifically how this connects to the sidewalk that goes around, I want to say it's Kahuna Lane, I believe, or Drive, and that connects back to 34th Street. The other connection would be out along the backside, which is the primary side of this building, to the green belt, which then takes you down and along to that cul-de-sac that's on 34th, and that's within the Casino Beach development. The discussion around parking, if you will, based on, we park the residential, there's basically a garage, 2-car garage here. And similar to the Greenbelt Market, this is a small space that Hanna is still developing on what happens here with the restrooms, and if there's any kind of kitchen component or element here. I think the remainder of square footage is roughly 500 square feet. And again, kind of small activity, pedestrian focused from the greenbelt. That is the front door of this facility. So no one's really going to be, from an access standpoint, be coming from the Casino Beach side per se. It would be all from the greenbelt side. That's the basic lay of the land for that. There are some other items related to landscaping and tree mitigation that have come up. And so like locations of trees and such. So I can, if you have any further questions, I can answer them. But as far as, there weren't a lot of comments, just from a standpoint of access, the connection from a fire standpoint, or why the building is shaped the way it is in terms of like access for fire apparatus. It doesn't have aerial access, so we're keeping that back eve at below 30 feet so that they can get up on the roof if need be. But again, the primary focus of the building articulation wise is towards the green belt, and that's kind of what this has been set up for. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or as well as if Hannah's on board, maybe can walk through the connection to 35th in that intention, as well as I think I saw Will on the line if he wants to talk to the landscape and what has been called out as our lack in tree mitigation, I believe, some of those landscape items.
This is Darian, just to talk about the tree mitigation and then the comment on adding trees along the green belt. We are working to revise the plans to add the 2 trees requested along the green belt. We don't have a lot of space, so they're pretty much going to be flanking the entrance of that pathway. I don't know if McHugh, you can bring that plan back up. But the entrance to the pathway into the lots from the green belt, they'll just be one on each side. And yeah, we're working to confirm we have enough room to add the access for the Thurman Mill easement, pathway easement, basically where that number 5 is shown. Those plantings will get removed, or I guess it will all get revised so it can fit through there. And then the tree mitigation, we're trying to figure that out. Per the arborist report, I'm not seeing where it was ever shown 129 inches to be mitigated, because we have it calculated as 56, which is taken care of as part of the Casino Beach plans. But we will continue to look into that and confirm.
And so that's as a project as a whole from Casino Beach, not necessarily because this project per se, I don't believe has any trees on its actual property that is worth, that has anything to do with mitigation. Is that correct, Darian? Or am I-
Yes, it does not. They should all be on the other lots on the project.
And then this is Will as well. I know McHugh, you were showing where, right, currently we have that connection to the property to the north, plan north being right there. That is still in the works with the neighbor. And so what we're going to do is we're going to move it right where he's showing right now, because we have control of that. We've been working with the neighbors to get an easement over on the other property, which we don't own. We can't get it there at this point. So we're going to push it back there. I'll move the irrigation, which is number 11. We'll slide that out of the way so that we can have that 12 foot of space that's required. And that is where our path access will be placed, is right there. So that'll be reflected on both this as well as then Casino Beach. Otherwise, there's just no room with that pump house and that existing transformer that are currently there, which is 13 and 14. There's the wave controls, which is 14, and 13 is a 3-phase Idaho power transformer that's already in place. So, yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Will, for speaking to that.
All right. Are there any other questions of the applicant? And then I do have a question, and maybe I can flip through some of the files to see how that interacts with the adjacent property on where the 12-foot pathway is planning to go for now. And then if you're not prepared now for that, I can turn it over to staff for the staff report.
Jenna, I'm sorry, did you want to ask the question first?
Yes, it was to see how that pathway proposal interacts with the adjacent property.
And then adjacent property, Dennis Young, or adjacent property, Bridge Townhouse, Jim Neal?
The Dennis, the one that's highlighted, the Dennis Young.
So I believe so, since we're going to start the pathway connection, once he redevelops his property, it'll just continue along that line. I mean, I'm sure he could route it in whichever direction. He could route it further north, or he could route it south and out. Was that not?
No, I think whoever's driving right now is trying to get there. Just out of curiosity, how does that interact with what's currently on the ground on the?
Oh, he's open on the other side of his fence line. There's no obstructions on the other side of his fence.
Yeah, I mean, this is really rudimentary, obviously. And I know before this meeting, Pat, last week, we were kind of working with how to get that pathway kind of along this property line. And again, you can see here's that one structure here, whether that's a pump house or electrical. There's, that one structure here that's basically like a 8x8 structure, 6x8 structure, something like that. I guess now, originally we were trying to get it so that it would literally be essentially where that pass through currently happens. If you're coming from the yard arm, you can go through that little gateway and then walk along the edge right behind the Greenbelt Market. But we were going to try and bring that along this fence line. So I think that's what's still in discussion. And Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong, but currently we don't have that access, so we can't really propose that. So that's why we can only show what is on our property until that at some point can get through on the adjacent property. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
and that's correct. I mean, you said that well. A point for staff or for Jenna is we're proposing that easement go directly on top of the Thurman Mill connection. So even on the other side, correct, where your cursor is, it couldn't be built on the other side additionally. So it's non-buildable. It'd be the top of the Thurman Mill on our parcel, and then additionally, correct, on Dennis's, it's still a Thurman Mill, just if the Thurman Mill pathway continued through.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. There was a late exhibit email response from Hanna Ball addressing the staff report and code compliance issues that's been added to the internet webpage. And essentially it's just going through item by item, addressing the staff report comments. Since we're talking about the Casino Beach easement, it was originally conditioned in the Casino Beach subdivision application, and it was approved by City Council, and they required that the easement be depicted in the plans. However, the connection through to 35th Street was not conditioned in that decision document, just that in the CC&Rs, the easement to the property line of Casino Beach states that it will develop at the time that that adjacent property redevelops and continues to 35th Street. So the easement is required prior to the approval of the final plat of Casino Beach, which, as we have discussed, this design review application is part of that Casino Beach subdivision. So before this project can even start constructing, that easement will need to be solidified and recorded with the final plat of the Casino Beach subdivision. And that is a condition within the decision document of this application. And then as far as the landscaping conversations we had during the design review pre-application conference, it was determined that the frontage could be considered the face fronting the greenbelt. And so staff was able to calculate the linear frontage as being equal to that of the East Palapa Lane, so about 64 linear feet. There were 4 proposed juniper trees to conceal the utility boxes associated with the Thurman Mill Canal and the Boise River surfing wave. But since they are junipers, they aren't considered to be class 2 or 3 trees. And so that's where the condition and code compliance discussion came about, is that those juniper trees just don't count as class 2 or 3 trees. And we would still need to have 2 of those class 2 or 3 trees at that frontage next to the green belt. And then the tree mitigation plan associated with the Casino Beach subdivision was reviewed during the Casino Beach construction plan review based off of the submitted arborist report. So I was able to determine that it appeared that 129 inches needed to be mitigated for removal of all the trees on the site of all of Casino Beach subdivision. And only 111 caliper inches were proposed within the subdivision. Taking it back to this application, if this application planted the required frontage trees, those caliper inches would be able to go towards that overall mitigation requirement of the subdivision. And then for parking requirements, the Casino Beach subdivision was approved with a parking reduction based off of a parking analysis submitted during the time of review. Commercial parking spaces for employees and patrons were calculated based off of a square footage ratio, which staff has consistently applied to other commercial developments within the city. That ratio being for every 300 square feet of commercial space, there is 1 parking space required. So with this being a mixed use application and there being a commercial aspect of 937 square feet of commercial space. There is a requirement of 3 vehicular parking spaces associated with that commercial space. That on top of the required guest parking space, which is 0.5 for the one dwelling unit, there is a total deficiency of 3.5 vehicular parking spaces for this project. Staff included the parking plan for the design review committee to review, this being the parking plan that was approved and reviewed under the Casino Beach subdivision application that City Council approved. City Council at the time of approval for Casino Beach did not have information regarding the pigeonhole development, or at that time it was called Hanna's unit. But it was understood that the pigeonhole project would be required to meet all of the current development code standards during the time of review. And so as it stands, the project is still deficient the 3.5 vehicular parking spaces based off of current code. The applicant has not formally requested alternatives to on-site parking, but they are providing the 4 bike racks on-site, and they're actively working on developing the pedestrian pathway and easement that will reach 35th Street once the adjacent property is developed or further agreements are established. The application also proposes a pedestrian plaza adjacent to the Greenbelt improvements, Greenbelt bike racks, and access to the ride share proposed on 34th Street for like Uber or Lyft.
Hannah, could I ask the question regarding the guest space? When we originally submitted for Casino Beach, I believe that this unit was still allocated as a residential unit, and the guest spaces for Casino Beach as a whole took that into account. Is that not correct?
I don't recall that being the case. I listed in the staff report, and it is in the Casino Beach subdivision decision document what exactly was approved. And let's see what it says. It goes into detail as to like the sizes of the parking spaces allowed, the 11 parallel spaces can exist there. So it does say there shall be at least 36 parking spaces for guest and commercial purposes, not including the parking on 34th Street or Carr Street. But my understanding of this condition and the approvals that City Council made was that because the anchor units and Hanna's units weren't submitted during the time of review for the overall subdivision, it would still need to be compliant with code at that time, because we didn't know exactly what was going to go on those lots, specifically the Hanna's unit lot, or pigeonhole as we're now calling it.
Yeah, I believe that, at least my recollection is that we had like a unit count based on residential units for the whole development, and we're working towards that number for the amount of guest parking and commercial parking we had. Now, granted, we didn't know, all we knew at that time was that Hanna's lot would have a residential unit on it. We didn't at that point know that there was a mixed use component. So I guess that's where I'm feeling like at least that we had the assumption that the guest parking for the overall development included the Hanna's lot within that understanding, but not the commercial component. So the notion that the 3 spaces per, or a space per 300 square feet is something that we're asking for a consideration on because of orientation and the concept behind what this commercial space is, and that it's not like a, come on down to, I don't know, the IHOP kind of situation here. But anyway.
Right, and I can look at the Casino Beach documents a little bit more. But there were, and looking really quickly, there were 27 units total reviewed in the Casino Beach subdivision proposal at that time.
Yeah, I'd have to go back. I can't remember what the total number is, but yep. That was just my recollection. I'm not trying to say that is exactly what it was, but.
Right, and say it was included in that, again, we'd have to further review it, but say it was included in that guest parking total, there would still be the requirement.
Yeah, requirement of 3.
Aspect.
Yep, understood.
And then I just had a question for staff. Was there an actual form for the alternatives to parking standards that we could apply, or was that more of a letter?
We don't normally have a form for it. I always ask an applicant to state their intentions, whether it's through a formalized letter, like letterhead to staff, or at least in the compliance statement, letter of intent portion of the application.
And Hannah, I thought we, on that statement of intent, I thought we did include that verbiage, that alternatives to parking, and happy to find solutions and talk through some scenarios that could satisfy with DR.
Yeah, and that would need to be a discussion here today for the record.
Okay.
If staff and the committee determines that what bicycle parking is provided, what plaza space, what alternative forms of transportation is provided, helps to mitigate for the lack of vehicular parking within the site, then that can be determined in the decision document.
Thank you, Hannah. And you brought up points that we agree with, that we did feel that we were going to provide additional bicycle parking, and the fact that this is a live work unit, the fact that we had ride share in the plaza, the fact that there was ample on-street parking for patrons, and patrons would not be staying the night. Also, I'll bring up my notes. Some other items is, again, we felt that the size and nature of this project is adequate for parking, and this workspace is nearly identical in size to to the Greenbelt Market, which has been a successful project based on pedestrian connectivity and reduced or has no vehicular parking. Additionally, again, those alternatives to on-site parking, we feel like we supersede, as well as providing additional connectivity throughout the community. And then again, if those aren't satisfactory, happy to have a discussion with staff as far as what a shared parking agreement could look like.
I might note that if it is shared parking agreement is something that is the direction and that the applicant would like conditions, that could be worked out through a condition and a review to make sure that it meets the criteria of what it needs to be signed within a quarter mile, et cetera.
I mean, I'd prefer that we have that discussion as far as what the alternatives to parking could be, and if we satisfy those.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. With that, to follow the hearing procedures, I'm going to move on to the public portion of this. And then the applicant can certainly have a rebuttal and maybe have some of those answers through the discussion process. It does look like Will Howard has his hand up.
And I had my hand up because I wanted to bring up the tree mitigation plan. So I don't know if now is the time, or if it should be during the rebuttal.
The rebuttal would be great if there is anybody that wishes to testify.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
Thank you.
I have those documents, so I can share my screen at that time.
Thank you. And it looks like Michael Slavin.
Hey there, thank you so much. And this is somewhat on the development team too, is one thing I'm gonna look into, and I think there might be a path at least to get allocation for one guest parking space or half a space, is that, based on our calculations for parking ratio, remember in the kind of the final deliberations of the approval of our project, we lost 3 hotel units. And so I think there might be a little slack there. And I think you round up or down with these things anyways, but I'll work with, of course, Hanna and Michael McHugh to see, I'll try to rectify that math, but we did lose 3 hotel units at the final voting. So I think there's a little bit of room there, at least for a guest parking spot. So for what it's worth.
Thank you. Jason Jones.
Hey, Jason Jones, 208 East 33rd Street, Garden City, Idaho. I guess I just wanted to comment on the parking. So I know this is in the live work neighborhood that maybe is only going to be that in name soon, but it still is as of right now, the live work. And having said that, I mean, this is actually a live work unit. And if this was actually submitted not as a bigger project as part of Casino Beach, but it's basically got a single living space with a workspace. And I think if it was submitted as a live work project, it would actually meet the parking for a live work unit as it is. So I think that's the first thing that should be stated, that maybe the only reason right now that it doesn't meet parking is because it can't be submitted as a live work unit because it's part of this larger development of Casino Beach. But I do believe that if you look at the comprehensive plan, it doesn't make sense to try to make this project harder to be approved by adding 3 commercial parking spaces to it that would basically prevent the commercial space from existing. Like, this project would be worse if this was just a single residential unit on the corner there. I mean, there's no doubt that everybody in the neighborhood's going to benefit with that commercial space there on the greenbelt. So I think the fact that you would somehow, for a 900 square foot commercial space that's effectively like the greenbelt market, you would try to add 3 parking spaces to this is ridiculous. It obviously should meets the requirements for a reduction in the parking for commercial. And I'll point out too that currently the city doesn't actually have commercial parking requirements. And so if this was taken to court, the city would lose and it wouldn't have to have that commercial parking anyway. So maybe all of that should be taken into account as a design review kind of moves forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no questions, is there anybody else who wishes to testify? In person? All right, seeing none, then I will turn it back over for the rebuttal, and I think you can show us your plans now.
I'm just going to pull up the arborist report and then the associated plan that we put together with the arborist report so that we can look at it together. I'll show you the arborist report. This is done by Tina with Done Right Tree. She came out, assessed all the trees on site. She actually gave us a map, which was pretty confusing. So we condensed it into an overall map and then sent it back to her. And I have emails if you guys need to see the proof that we documented them correctly. Happy to do that. Can you all see the plan view sheet that I just switched over to?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is the plan view that was submitted with the project. And this is where we're confused, is we have a total to mitigate of 56 inches. per the arborist report, we went through and we labeled all of them on the plan per her stuff. And I can get the emails clarifying that, yes, this is what she had intended. And we have the trees called out and labeled where they're all at on the site itself. And so I'm a little bit confused from, again, this is two projects kind of rolled into one, but it's kind of the approval of one helps us get the approval of all of them. I would just like to clarify of where and how we haven't met the mitigation requirements that were proposed and how we're missing caliper inches still. So I don't know if once this is over, if we can kind of go through that. And this has all been submitted. I can re-email it. We can make sure everybody has copies of all of it again. So that's my side of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the team that wishes to add to the rebuttal? All right. And then staff is going to speak to the trees.
Yeah, so I don't have my calculations in front of me right now for the Casino Beach construction plan reviews. But it was based off of that map that she submitted and the other associated documents. So I can look into that after the meeting here today, because I just would like to point out that there is a condition drafted in the decision document to allow for the resolution of the tree mitigation to be solved. It's not something that would necessarily hang us up today. If the committee did decide they wanted to grant that approval or denial, it can be handled at a more staff and applicant level because of that condition in there.
Thank you. And I'll formally close the public portion of and turn it over to the committee members for their discussion.
Just a quick question for Hanna on the draft decision document. It appears that in the draft, as far as under the site-specific requirements, that it's drafted in a way that the 3.5 guest and commercial stalls are not required. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Well, I think that, oh, go ahead. Is
Oh,
that Hanna?
Sorry. What I was going to say is I did look at the standards quickly for I don't know that they're relevant in this application is not applied for under this Earl Mitchell, but it would require 2 parking spaces, 1 for the commercial, 1 for the live space. And I also do want to point out and just make a record of it. If there's commercial and there's any parking provided whatsoever on site, there will be a requirement that commercial space be ADA. And ADAs, at least 1 space be ADA.
Well, I think that the easiest one is the trees, and it seems like that staff and the applicant have that or can figure that out pretty efficiently. So we don't need to discuss that much, I don't think. And the pedestrian access coming from within the development, I think it does show more clearly now how that end of sidewalk then gets to the front door of the residential. So I'm comfortable with that. As far as parking goes, I think this is a very unique project, and it's, I think, fortunate that we have the example of the Greenbelt market right, 50 feet away from this project, which is very similar in a lot of ways. Because what I see in my interaction with the Greenbelt market is it's Greenbelt users using the market. And I think that this commercial space is going to be very much the same way. So I'm not looking heavily for commercial parking spaces on here because I think that the common user is going to be coming from the greenbelt, whether they're pedestrian or bicyclists. Having said that, it makes me question, you know, is the employee or employees always going to come via car or via pedestrian and bike? And so if not, then what can this parcel provide for incentives for the employees to come via bike or ride share or car? So I think there should be something, you know, some way that the employee, you know, on a rainy day has an easier way to get to work than biking or walking, or an alternative way. So I think that could be a condition, that there is some, you know, incentives that the company that is in that commercial space is providing to the employee to get to work. And just to speak again to the uniqueness of the project, we think of a commercial, like most every other commercial project, there is one or two employees and they're drawing, you know, hundreds of cars throughout the day. This is going to have one or two employees. It's going to be drawing hundreds of bicycles and pedestrians throughout the day. So it's a really unique commercial space as far as how it's interacting with the public and their modes of transportation. And I think it's a great anomaly, and I don't think we should treat it like we treat every other commercial space, because it's not like every other commercial space. And as far as guest parking, as McHugh was kind of recollecting his understanding of the guest parking as a whole, I think that made sense, and that seemed like my understanding as well, as that the project as a whole was considering this to be something, and that something was residential. So, you know, I think that extra half for the guest for the residential is kind of off the table. And then therefore the extra commercial spaces, as I've stated, and as you probably are getting from my monologue, I'm not looking at those to be very important, but I do want to see some sort of incentive for alternative transportation for the employees.
Yeah, for me, I'm not, I guess I concur with the uniqueness of this particular parcel and its relationship, and the enhanced connectivity that space has to the greenbelt with the addition of the 12-foot pedestrian pathway. I mean, this the overall connectivity that's happening there. It looks like it's really facilitating a very strong connection to the greenbelt, which in my mind reflects that most of the customers or users will be coming from the greenbelt. And so I'm not concerned about the parking. I think the fact that there is one of the guest parking stalls is right out in front of the entrance of this particular unit. It seems proximity, it'll probably more or less be getting used for this unit either way. And yeah, so I guess I'm not too concerned about that. I think that the pedestrian connectivity to the let's call it the south interior to the rest of the development, it addresses what my concern was, that it didn't really feel like there was any kind of visually strong linkage there internally. It was just kind of isolated down a asphalt drive. So I'm satisfied with that. I think that accomplishes that as well. And so I think that as conditioned addresses the trees And so I would be in favor of moving this forward. So I'll make that a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right.
Thank
The
you,
next
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
The next item on the agenda is design review fiscal year 2022, number 9. Jeff Hatch is requesting a new construction of a commercial building for a multi-tenant artist studio located at 4708 Fenton Street. Mr. Hatch?
Good afternoon, Jenah and Hanna and Design Review Commissioners. Thank you for your time this evening. Share this. We have our design review application for the Fenton Artist Studios. Just a quick recap as far as the location. So we are located off of Fenton Street. It's kind of where 47 doesn't continue on, it kind of jogs. So it's kind of tucked back off of Chinden, but it is, and you can swing off of 48th and get there pretty quick. Adams is just down here. From the last commission comments, did make some revisions to the site plan, which I can kind of go into greater detail. Kind of itemize those, but just as far as the site plan itself, we'll just kind of go back to this as we speak to comments, as well as the landscaping plan, revised elevations. We also have our glazing calculations, which I'll speak to in a moment, and the updated concept renderings. So as far as comments from the most recent staff report, there's comment about 8-foot fencing proposed into the lot and wanting separation between the residential and commercial units. And so you see in our site plan, we've added this wall to separate and add a pedestrian gate, because the owner's intent is to have this occupied for one of the employees that will be working here. And or they'll kind of own and operate is their other concept. So we've included that fence, and then in addition to that, we're wanting to just state that all the chain link that's on the site, transfer amount will be removed. There's consideration and concern for the existing residential structure and bringing that up to design review compliance to some extent. So we did that by proposing a stoop leading to the front entrance, and then there was concern because originally there was kind of a canopy kind of parking in front of the structure. That has been revised, and there's actually covered parking kind of tucked back to the side on the west. So if we go back right here, this is where the parking is, this is where the entrance is, this is where the stoop is. A nice, obvious, prominent entry for the residents. Front facade glazing percentages are not shown. So we did go ahead and add those with storefront canopies and awnings. So if we go back, we can see a storefront glazing. And if we go to our elevations on our southwest, we have about 36%, and on the southeast, which was Hannah's primary concern in the staff report, we've now tabulated that, beefed it up a little bit, so we're just over our threshold required. We had considerations for enhancements to Fenton and 47th Street. I was not at that hearing, but it sounded like there was some fairly clear and adamant need for additional awnings, recesses, and architectural treatments to the street facades to enhance those. And so you can see from our concept renderings, we've done quite a bit
to address that as well. As far as the primary entrances, these ones have the awnings directly above on each side. So each unit has a pedestrian access with a covered entry. And then on our facades, we do have the awnings up high. If the commission wants additional awnings down low for weather protection on the street facade, I feel that the ones up high will serve that purpose, but we're certainly open to suggestions if that's a need or desire. We also added a range of offsets and variations to the ridge lines and walls to the buildings to make sure that those are more compatible with the roof lines exceeding the 50 feet requirement. For the residents, there's also comments about if that residence had more parking spaces, and so we did update our site plan so that we would have potential guest slash kind of flex parking that could be used for commercial or could be used for the residents as guest parking. In most cases for residents, they tend to use that guest parking in the evenings, which complements the use for commercial, which tends to use it during the day. And then I guess the one request or consideration that we have would be in regards to the tabulation of the 25 required parking spaces, which is tabulated off of that 300 square foot commercial space calculation. In the past, that has been something that's been justified with a parking study or parking analysis. In revising our site plan, we did create this parking map. So we would be proposing 26 parking spaces. If you eliminate the 2 that are used for the residents, we would have 24 proposed, which is a proposed efficiency of 4 parking spaces. We did do, we pulled a parking analysis that we've used in the past that was previously approved for similar kind of artisan slash flex space for justification. Our intent would be to do something in the first 2 categories of artisan studio slash bike parking. We have no intention, and if it's the commission's desire to restrict the balance of these uses, I think they would all be kind of egregiously not appropriate for this space. But in theory, if you had 5 units, they're all averaging about 4 to 5 spaces. We can get to 24 spaces comfortably, and we feel like we can justify that based on current uses in our general area, since these are Garden City spaces. So deficiency of approximately 4 parking spaces. The other consideration would be that since this intended individual would be the employee parking as well, you know, in theory, we're kind of reducing that by an additional 2 parking spaces. So it's a request of approximately 2 to 4 parking spaces, depending upon how you want to kind of interpret that request. So that would be a consideration that we're open to suggestions, but we would want to acknowledge that. And I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hatch? Seeing none. Turn it over to Ms. Veal for her staff report.
Thank you. I just ask that you, Jeff, can provide your presentation for the record, especially the parking analysis that you just presented, since it wasn't submitted as part of the analysis documents. Thanks.
Yep.
What was that?
Yes, we can definitely do that.
Thank you. There were some late submittal documents that were received on July 29th, 2022. Staff didn't perform a thorough analysis of these new materials, but it did look at a few major details that either changed or stayed the same. The new plans continue to show the 8-foot tall fence, which the design review committee will need to approve of. But has been conditioned to require that this 8-foot tall fence returns at a later date for this approval due to lack of details provided in the plans, such as what it is made of. Discussion regarding Garden City Code 84C3, the design provisions for non-residential structures is required. Because during the pre-application conference, the committee made comments regarding the roof line articulation, shadow play, different building setbacks, all to decrease the appearance of a prefabricated metal structure. Staff was unable to calculate the percentage of glazing along the facades that face the public right-of-way due to lack of information, but the schematics show that it might be deficient along both the Fenton and 47th Street side. Without proper glazing along the frontages of 47th and Fenton Street, the buildings might not properly meet the intended use of artist studio, which is required to show art pieces or pieces of work or the production of those pieces of work to the public, as discussed earlier in the staff report in the discussion pages. Other elements such as building recesses, canopies, and marquees are not shown above the pedestrian entrances, which is required of this 84C3 code. It does look like the windows have some kind of covering, but it's not over the doorways, at least in the schematics that were provided. As far as parking goes, the recent submittals show additional parking. It shows that the site contains 10 enclosed vehicular parking spaces within the artist studios. If this area is designated as the parking within the studios, there might be little to no room for the actual production aspect of the artwork pieces or whatever is being produced within those artist studios, since it would be used for parking. Original calculations show the site to be deficient 17 parking spaces, but the late submittals add an additional 4 surface parking spaces, decreasing that deficiency to 13. Without a parking study or sufficient alternative modes of transportation, the site appears to be underparked and not compliant with code. Further discussion regarding the type of use or uses that will be on the site would determine the need for parking ultimately. Staff has conditioned that at least 14 spaces are to be provided, but the committee can change that number based off of the discussion here today. Or at least the uses that are going to be shown, or the new submittal documents. With that, I stand for questions.
I don't have any specific questions.
All right, seeing no questions of staff, I'll open this up to the public hearing. The first person that we have in person to testify is Joel Heron. There's a microphone at that podium, if you wouldn't mind coming up and. There's a couple, there's a camera that.
Which way do I need the face, I guess is a better question.
Well, I don't know that the camera will catch you, so. It's
right behind you.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I am Joel Heron. I reside at 4677 North Windward Court. So I am on the the northeast corner of that property. And I will also be testifying for 2 other people that could not attend this meeting. The first one is Saul Lopez, He lives also on the corner of 47th and Windward Court on the north side. And Brent A. Smith, as well, has asked me to speak for him. So as I speak this, I realize we are talking about three people with the same concerns. Item number one is the on-street parking. That is a huge problem we already have at that facility. The current landscape company is parking in a residential area and also down 47th Street. We find that as a homeowner totally unacceptable. Parking employees in a commercial, from a commercial in a residential area. The access, can we bring that plan up, please? That showed the access.
She's.
Is this okay?
Okay, so where is the egress to the parking spaces that are where it says existing dwelling? Because from what I'm hearing, that's going to be part of the parking. Is that correct? So where's the egress coming off of Fenton Street? Am I just not seeing it? Or is it not
They're
spelled out?
They're labeled 5, I think.
There we go. Okay, excellent. Okay, now the other question I got is planning and zoning allowing parking on the street for commercial buildings. Is that something that is allowed? Because all of us have a real issue with the parking on that corner. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I can tell you the three of us have a huge issue with that. And we would ask that 47th Street all be posted no parking. That is just a huge problem for the traffic coming out of that residential area. And we'd like to see both sides of 47th Street posted as no parking. Because when they're backing their commercial equipment stuff out of there, it's just a huge problem. Now, obviously, the art studios will be less of a problem, but history shows that that lot has had that problem in the past. We're hoping to alleviate that at this time. The 8-foot fence that you spoke of, is that across the back of the property on the Davis Drain?
I'd like to know, just for procedural, to follow the hearing procedures, any questions that come up, either the applicant will address during rebuttal or may come out and during discussion. So you can ask, but we won't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So my next question would be the 8-foot fence that's going across the back. Currently, that Davis Drain, my understanding, is not part of this property, and yet they've got it fenced off and says private property. There's no way you can get in there to clean that property up because they've got it fenced off. I have a real concern with that because all the neighbors by the Davis Drain, according to what we're seeing on the street, they're claiming it's their property. And that needs to be opened up and cleaned up. So I do have that issue. And that is all the issues that the three of us had. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Herron? All right, seeing.
Aye.
Thank you. The next person that we have signed up is Michael Lee.
Thank you. My name is Mike Lee. I live at 4725 Windward Court, which is right on the other side of the Davis Drain from the back of this property. And we're basically neutral about the project, but we do have three concerns. One is noise, two is lighting in the area, and third is possibility of chemical fumes and odors coming from the tenants projects that are doing there. The noise issue, one area is the air conditioning, heating and cooling fans in the back of building A. We're right at our backyard, basically is right across from that. And the proposal I thought of was to move those to the other side of the building, closer to the existing building, like the fans are on the building B, similarly. So if they were moved over, then that would eliminate that issue completely. The other issue is the lighting coming off the building, like in building B, lighting up the parking below the base of the building. That concern is whether that lighting will be coming down and bleeding over the Davis Drain into the backyards. And that might be mitigated by whatever type of fence or wall that's proposed at the back of the property near the drain. If it was an impermeable fence or some sort of wall, that would probably minimize drift over and noise, other noises. That's the other aspect of noise, is from the artist studios themselves, not knowing what they're going to be doing there, if there's noise, and if there's also issues with the late hours in the evening noise, because it's a residential area that it's adjacent to. So that's basically I think is a fair proposal, is some sort of impermeable fence or a wall that can mitigate some of these issues along the Davis Drain.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lee? All right, seeing none, thank you. Is there anybody else in person who wishes to testify on this matter? All right, and it looks like no one has their hand raised on Zoom. If you don't know how to raise your hand, just speak up if you wish to testify. All right. Seeing none, I'll turn it back over to the applicant for rebuttal.
Thank you, Jenah and commissioners. I'd like to speak a little bit to some of the comments that Hanna had, as well as the neighbors. At least from our presentation and what will be provided to Hanna, we have tabulated and calculated the glazing for 2 elevations and questions. We feel that we can justify the required glazing amounts. In addition, we go back to a comment about the street facade and making sure that we have appropriate use for an artisan studio. We do feel that the addition of these roll-up doors with our storefront pedestrian access allows for more of kind of a retail setting. If you were showing your wares or trying to entice individuals as far as pedestrian connectivity, as well as have kind of your primary entrance. So as far as those comments go, we feel from the glazing standpoint, and also from the serviceability of the artisan studios, that has been addressed. As far as comments from Mr. Heron, wanted to speak to those for a moment. Joel had requested having a no parking sign along East Fenton. In doing so, that would eliminate two of the proposed parking spaces that we had shown on a little diagram map, which in talking with the applicant, if the commission is okay with that, our parking analysis and tabulation has on average 3 to 4 parking spaces per unit. We have 5 units, that's 20 parking spaces. So we're currently in our tabulation overparked by approximately 4 parking spaces. So if we eliminate 2, we'd still have 22 parking spaces, which gives us a little bit of flexibility of 4 parking spaces or 5 parking spaces for tenants, which we feel is still adequate and helps respond to some of the neighbors' concerns on 47th. So we just throw that out as a consideration or concession for Mr. Heron. The commission deems that appropriate. In regards to Mr. Lee's comments, if there needs to be any strong verbiage or conditions of approval about noise, lighting, chemical fumes, odors, we have no concerns with adding a statement like that. We typically see that for conditions of approval. For something that's outright already approved and going through a design review would be a little unusual to condition use requirements on that. But again, we have no intention of being a bad neighbor, and if we need to add more conditional restrictions onto the design review, we have no concerns with that. As far as the consideration of relocating the condenser units, that's an easy request, and we can more than happily oblige that request. I don't see any concerns or issues with having it on this side of the site versus on the other side of the building. So we would propose to address that as well. And then the consideration for hours of operation, most of those are reviewed based on tenant improvement. And if that tenant improvement requires conditional use, then those restrictions would then be applied at that time. Again, a little unusual to restrict the design review with a restriction of hours, but again, the applicant would be fine if we need to have any deemed hours of operations to help respond to the neighbors. We'd be more than happy to do that. And for the record, as far as lighting goes, we would intend to do something that is dark sky compliant. So we're keeping all of our light on site. The intention would be not to have any delinquent light that is going out beyond our property line. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hatch?
Nope.
All right. Then we'll close the public portion of this hearing and turn it over for discussion.
Actually, I do have one question for Mr. Hatch, and the Davis drain fence was mentioned, just so we can clarify on that. Is that proposed at 8 feet as well, or is that a 6-foot fence? It was just 8 feet between A and B.
Great question, Commissioner Hurd. At this time, that Davis drain area is kind of in limbo. So we'd be currently not proposing a fence. If the commission deems it appropriate to put in some kind of fence there, we certainly can. We've reached out. The owner has had their attorney talk with the drainage district. So the drainage district doesn't know who owns it. It's kind of this gray area. If they can acquire it, if it's owned by the city, if it's owned by the irrigation company, nobody really knows. So we're kind of doing a title search report to try to figure out if it's something that can be acquired. At this time, it's yet unknown if that is going to be achieved or not. So we proposed it to be landscaped, but not fenced at this time. If it appeared that the primary concern with the fencing is lighting, I feel like we can address that architecturally, ensuring that we have appropriately shrouded and screened lighting. One of the most effective ways that we've done that in the past, and our current architectural direction on that side would reflect that, would be having the lighting at a point source at the egress, and then having that covered by a canopy that then restricts the light even more. As far as lighting for the parking area, we could propose more of an appropriate task lighting on building A, and would be indirectly lighting that so that we're not shining directly to the north or the northwest of those neighbors, to be respectful to that consideration. So I feel like we could condition something of that nature, and maybe that fence comes online later. Because if it's not acquirable, they'll probably come back with a fence permit to request something, because they would want to have it, not just open-ended to a ditch. But in the meantime, it does seem like historically that has been used by the old property owner of this area. Some of the neighbors got the impression that the current owner is the individual who sold that, and our intention is to do what's right. And if that isn't their land, they're not going to occupy that. And if they can acquire that land, by all means, they'd like to improve that at that time, which would require another permit for that fence, which would then be reviewed and considered.
Okay, so at this point, it's drawn, and what we would be looking at for a recommendation of approval is that it's just landscaping. So we'll move forward with that.
Is there an 8-foot fence still on the project between the in and around the residential unit?
There currently is a proposed fence that would separate the residential from the commercial at this location.
Kind of corner to corner.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Separate that. Again, if the commission is okay not having that, or fine not having that.
What's the reason for it needing to be 8 feet tall versus a 6-foot solid fence of some sort?
No reason. If you guys want 6, I'm fine with 6.
My feeling is that we would need to, or I would like to see what this 8-foot fence is going to look like aesthetically. If it was a 6-foot fence, you could tell us that, is it a wrought iron? Is it a more of a privacy vinyl or what? And it would be fine.
Okay. Yeah, I think we would be more inclined to do a 6-foot fence of an appropriate material deemed by the commission. Let's leave it at that, so we don't have to delay the fence.
Yeah, I just make it 6, and it's kind of off the table as an issue.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And for the discussion, I think that there was one question brought up that the applicant wouldn't necessarily be the right person to answer, and that's whether or not parking's allowed on the street for commercial uses. There's nothing in code that strictly prohibits that. However, if the community is interested in no on-street parking within the area, I would suggest engaging ACHD as maybe a first step, as well as perhaps the police department might be another group that would be interested, but certainly it's an ACHD right of way, and they would be the first governmental entity to have that discussion with.
Yeah, that was my thoughts, and kind of in response to Joel's comments. That's between the neighbors and ACHD, but my impression, having watched these and driven down a lot of streets, is that the street parking is a good thing, not only for there's parking available there. The street was designed to have parking there, but it actually calms traffic. The narrower the travel lane, the slower the traffic's going to go. So if both of those sides were labeled no parking, then people are going to go 45 miles an hour down there instead of 20 or whatever it's posted. So the more parking and restriction, the calmer that street's going to be. And that's my opinion, but also probably the opinion of traffic design engineers, of which I'm not. But I just wanted to have that noted. And I think that the window percentages, I think that's just math that Hanna can look at with Jeff's calculations on the Fenton Street side and on the 47th Street side. And if those meet the, the commercial storefront, but also the artist's retail sort of storefront, then that seems fine. I do think that on those storefronts, we do need some pedestrian scale awnings. There's awnings on that side. They're up on the second floor. I think additionally, we need them on the main floor just to make those look like entrances and give it kind of a street front presence.
Yeah, I would agree with those comments. I was just looking at the revised. Was there any revised 3D stuff that was submitted that we don't? And we don't have anything in our package.
I didn't see it.
Jeff, was there stuff that you were flipping through there? Is that revised imagery, or is it the original imagery?
Commissioner Labrie, that has been revised based on the elevations showing the appropriate glazing and the awnings.
Yeah, no, I'm just the 3D images that you were flipping through there. I wasn't seeing those in our packet anywhere.
No,
and so I'm just kind of wondering if that, okay, so that really hadn't got into the official application.
But does that 3D reflect what we do see in the official application? It's just 3D, not 2D. Is that correct, Jeff?
That is correct, and so we can add awnings here.
Yep. And what I do see in 3D that I can't interpret from 2D or isn't represented, if you scroll back a couple, I think it's the Fenton, go back one more. Yep, right there. That, I don't know how that's representing in 2D, but I see that in 3D as kind of a false facade, a false front at the top corner there, up high. And I think that
that flying parapet.
Yeah, I always like to see that return, 4 feet or 6 feet, so it looks like an element, not just a 2x6 wall that has siding on it. So if you can make that enclose that upper, yeah, exactly, you got it.
Looks like it's happening on both ends of that building A.
Yeah, would you need that on this side?
What's it doing down there?
Down there, it's creating a firewall. It's
okay.
For the residents, so it actually needs to do that. If we put that wing on it, it complicates that architectural feature quite a bit. So I got a right wall and roof, cricket, and all kinds of fabulous things.
I'm less concerned with it down there because it's not, street front presence. But I do think it should be taken care of on the 47th Street facade.
Okay, definitely do that.
It's that old, Western town facade look that we want to avoid.
We are in the West. Okay, so I got the entry awnings, I got the condenser relocation for the neighbors, I have a 6-foot high pedestrian fence, the design review appropriate finish of wrought iron or vinyl. And then the wing wall parapet condition.
I have a suggestion for a condition of approval, should it go that route today, where perhaps any future venting be vented away from the residences.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
there was a number of things that were brought up there as far as, you know, the uses, as far as venting and noise and lighting and exhaust and fumes and all of those sort of things. I see those in the code itself, you know, under nuisances. So I don't think we need to go through and spell out in a design review approval all these different things that are covered under city code already.
Not being an architect and maybe as familiar with code, would the venting be something that would be included in that?
I think there is something in the back of my mind talks about, you know, noxious fumes and dust and things like that. That's not architectural design code. It's city nuisance code.
Okay.
And
But-
you know, I think also with that is the evaluation of the use when that comes through.
Right, right.
You know, to make sure it's something that the city feels that it's compatible there. And
I
allowed.
think the applicant's willing to, you know, put a vent on one side versus the other because, you know, it's not a big architectural feat. And then I can't access how the draft is written. Is there a condition about parking that talks to the parking study? That as drawn with the parking study, it's sufficient?
I forgot if we're still in the public hearing. Can I speak?
Why don't you speak while they're looking?
Okay. So that parking analysis was done for another project off of 47th Street, which was accepted by the city. With that, we had two similar structures, similar use structures, which we were trying to analyze what the parking would be relevant. So I feel it's fairly accurate because it's literally the same street that this is on, as far as an analysis goes. So right now, if I'm reading the design review conditions correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hannah, it's conditioning requiring 14 parking spaces. If we do not count the off-street parking spaces currently proposed, we would have 19 parking spaces. If we take out the 2 parking spaces for the residents, we would be at 17 parking spaces, which is still 3 over what is currently conditioned. And
Okay.
You know, our analysis would support somewhere in that 15 to 20 parking space range. So right there in between.
Okay. Thank you.
As far as conditions go, condition number 6 mentions that there will be a minimum of 14 vehicular parking spaces provided on site with 10 to be enclosed. And that's based off of the original submittals.
Okay.
I don't have any other additional comments. I think that I guess I'm okay with moving this forward with the drafted conditions and those few that we added.
Okay. And Hanna or Jenah, are you comfortable with the ones we've added and what those were?
Continuation of the parapet, a reduction of the 8-foot fence to 6 foot, relocation of the HVAC equipment. It's otherwise in code, but dark sky compliant lights with indirect lighting. And then a feeling that it's otherwise already conditioned or code will take care of many of the items that were discussed, such as noise, fumes, etc.
And entry / pedestrian scale elements on the street fronts.
Thank you.
And with those conditions and the conditions as drafted, I would move that we approve this.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you to the applicant and those who have testified.
Thanks, Jeff.
Appreciate your time. Take care.
And with that, we're moving out of our public hearing portion of the meeting and moving into pre-application discussions. The first discussion is with Jeff Likes for design review fiscal year 2022, number 20, requesting industrial flex use located at West State Street, Ada County Parcel number R844876010. Mr. Likes, turn the floor over to you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, trying to share my screen here for you. So we'll quickly give you a little background on what we're doing, and I want to clarify. I think we had talked with Hanna initially about making these industrial flex. If that, I know that belongs in or has to go through a conditional use process as well as this. And so if we feel that that's not going to work, the owner, it will also go to just like an open office type plan. And I've got a plan in here that we'll go over for that concept as well. But to give you a background, right off of State Street, there's some offices up front here. There's a dentist office and a couple other offices. This is formerly KM's office for those who know where they used to be. There's like a Jim's Heating and Cooling in there, I believe is in there right now. So they've got a call center, plus they do storage for their heating and cooling and their trucks and equipment, that type of stuff. So we're talking about these two buildings here. The little one here is right up front. It's just a 2-bay office building. And then the little bigger one is back here. This project, I think Hannah pointed it out, there are quite a few lots. At one point they went through a process to get all these individual lots back there. So we would either take and or add whatever we needed for lots that are back there. But kind of give you, come off of State Street, little office up front, more parking here, and then parking on the east and west sides of the complex. Just as this is the simple two-bay unit up front, more office, little overhead door in the back for their open office concept. Here's the bigger one in the back, which is probably more of a question because it backs up to the residential use behind. So what I've noticed here is I actually had these labeled wrong. We have office up front, storage and break in the back of all these units. I had reversed it there on that plan, but here's just a sample plan, a little office for a owner, little restroom, kind of open office area there. Go to the elevations that we've got. Here's the 2-bay elevation. This one here faces State Street. More windows up front, man door, entrance door, kind of on the east and west of that north elevation. Here's the rear elevation with the overhead doors on that. And then the bigger one is here. They do like that single slope, kind of modern looking building back there. Again, overhead doors in the front on this one, and then awnings and some windows in the back to help break that up for the residential uses that are behind us. Let's see, we've got some renderings here to kind of show you what we're thinking. We went with the same color scheme that was on the existing office flex uses that are in there. With that, you'll see here, it's the same stucco and the same stone with awnings. And these are all just the sign bands. How those turn out, we're not sure yet, but we just want to show something for signage for the people that take those spaces. Give you an idea of kind of what we're looking at. We've got 3 or 4 roof lines that come in here. You can see it there. There's lower heights, bigger heights. So kind of help break that up for anybody that's driving by. Give you another look there of kind of what it's looking like with more just industrial type use everybody seems to want these days. Let's see, sorry, flipping through some paperwork here. I think that's pretty much everything I've got for now. And so we can stand for some questions. Or I guess Hannah's going to present a little bit. So I think we'll hold for now.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Not right now.
Would you like to give a report or just?
I don't
So-
necessarily have to give a full report. There's just a particular comment regarding the use. And one of the conditions that it would be part of that use. So Garden City Code 82C speaks specifically to the particular use of industry flex. And it says that all mechanical equipment emissions, shipping and or delivery or other outdoor activity areas shall be located a minimum of 500 feet from any abutting residential district. The abutting zoning district to the south is zoned R2, which is considered the low density residential district. So it is well within that 500 radius. Essentially across State Street is outside of that 500-foot radius. So the activities would need to be limited out front there. Code doesn't go into any more detail regarding what outdoor activity means. But it's pretty clear what all mechanical equipment emissions means and shipping and or delivery. Thank you.
I guess speaking to that, it's on page 7 of her staff report. All mechanical equipment emissions, shipping and or delivery or other activities shall be located within 500 feet. I guess I got a question, maybe you can answer. What would be mechanical equipment emissions? Because every building over there has mechanical equipment, HVAC. So I'm kind of curious as what mechanical equipment emissions would be. Doesn't sound like an HVAC unit. It sounds more of like an industrial type use where it's got, paint booths or I don't know, some other type thing where it's obnoxious, smells or noise versus just standard HVAC equipment.
Yeah, I'm kind of interpreting that the same way, and it's not for me to like interpret the original intent of that code, but you're right. HVAC, it's like everything, even the houses that we're protecting have HVAC mechanical equipment emissions, right? So I would interpret it more as the mechanical equipment that's specific to the industry flex, right? And you could reduce those emissions by not having tenants that have emissions, right? There's nobody processing sugar beets and making offensive emissions. It's, the use is going to determine what those emissions are. And I think that the use could be restricted to not create those emissions, if that made sense.
Right, and I appreciate that, Derek. I think that's the way I interpret it as well. Like you said, it's obnoxious fumes and odors and things that are more there, not just an HVAC unit. So hopefully staff can, and maybe it'll shed light when we go to the next hearing or whatever. But I just want a clarification on that.
So is the idea that you'll be moving forward with trying to get the conditional use at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
At this point, that that is.
So we may see it again if that. You may see it differently.
Right.
what
The
it
building
is.
necessarily will change, but maybe the uses will change, and maybe even Hanna or Jenah can answer. But I mean, even during a conditional use, I think we could condition it to certain uses, which I think Hanna may have said earlier that, hey, we don't allow X use or Y use, but these other uses are okay, which I think we would also be open to. Like we heard, we're not going to have the obnoxious sugar beet factory type stuff. Those really don't belong in this area. We'd be looking at more uses that I don't even think would have any sort of obnoxious odor or sound or whatever. It's just they need a place to go, put some stuff and leave for the day, type of deal. And have an office, a space to have an office for 2 or 3 employees or 4 employees or whatever. So that's kind of the uses that we're looking at. Next door, like I said, it's a Jim's Heating. I think they take over more than half that building at the back, and they have their trucks parked up front, yet they have a call center inside of there, and they store their HVAC, supplies, but yet they're not there half the time because they're out doing work. So those are the type of uses that we're seeing that could be here.
I do have a suggestion on the site layout, being adjacent to those residences, that perhaps quite a bit of like big trees, greenery that pops out through the fence between the commercial use, especially if this is going to end up being industrial, and the residents might protect that residential feeling a little bit.
Sure. And right now we've got a pretty dense landscaping. Whoa, sorry. We have a pretty dense landscaping that's going on back here. And if we need to add more evergreens or whatever, I like that option, at least be able to more or less screen along. I think they all have fencing back there too. So, but that would help.
Yeah, this is, when you've got that drawing up there right now, just kind of explain to me a little bit about, where's, as far as pedestrian connectivity from these entrances to these spaces. And it just seems to me that there's, if there's an office component into this thing as well, that you could potentially have customers or people that are showing up to then come and visit these various tenant spaces. And how does that occur? It just looks like a large drive access aisle.
Right, and this
on
is
that
our,
side
this
of the
was our,
building.
yeah, I agree. This was our landscape plan, but we've revised, kind of thought about it. There would be more or less parking in these general areas. They're kind of anywhere except for we don't have the overhead door. You'd have, quite a few bit of parking here and that type of stuff.
Isn't that where you have, oh no, you don't have overhead doors there.
Well, we do
I see
not,
what you're
right.
saying.
Right. So we'd have parking around. We don't have overhead doors. We also, and I saw that in here, the pedestrian connectivity. We have not done that part yet at all, but there will be, we'll make connection to these other sites. I think that's that's doable, you know, striping, different material, whatever we may need to get that. And we'll certainly work on this. Where do we park customers? How do we park customers? We can show that for round 2 or the next time we submit. I guess for now it was, hey, how, you know, is this even going to be an allowed thing? How is staff going to feel? How are you guys going to feel? How does everybody like the, you know, the elevations, that type of stuff?
Okay, well, yeah, let's talk about the elevations there. Because I guess that's the other one that I look at and I say, you know, just looking at, there's some opportunities with the change in plane and kind of creating these different mass elements, but yet that's not been realized on this single, basically a 2 material palette. We've got this stone, I call it, like maybe a stone 1970s kind of wainscot thing happening down there, and then it's all stucco and it seems to be all one color. I just think when you come back with this to look at the opportunities for how you might treat even like that end mass piece, it's different. It can have some different treatment on there, and to really kind of, I don't know, break it up even visually with your colors and material palettes.
Yeah, initially we were thinking this matches what's exactly next door. So it was kind of be together is.
But does it have to? It's got a different orientation, you know, it's facing.
Right, it does. You're right. It orients the front part. It's got some CMU on it. The back part has more stucco. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
So I would just look at that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, and it's its own bird too. I mean, what's there is, you know, more office looking, and this is more industrial looking, you know, so I think that the materials should be more industrial looking too.
Yeah.
And then it was noted in the staff report, I think, just to look at the glazing in the front, on the front unit. So you'll obviously have that in the next go round. And then pedestrian connectivity, I think that's one that we spent quite a bit of time talking about on a different application.
Yeah.
When the proposal was basically to match what's there exactly. And then, you know, we kind of questioned how you get from State Street to these new units. Because it seemed to me like the sidewalk sort of ended after it turned off of State Street 30 feet, and maybe it was supposed to continue along the side of the frontmost building. So maybe you flip that connection over to the new small lot up front and kind of get us from State Street down to the back.
Get us back into here. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, we can certainly look at that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely doable. And I assume we're talking also connectivity between I'm going to call it the 4 buildings, because they're really,
yeah,
this building here is essentially a different building than this use here. So we'd get connection to all of them and kind of see how we can make that work.
Yep.
Just get people off of State and wrap around our site.
Yeah, just some interconnectivity between all those buildings. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. And with this one back here, is there, okay, I think I see an enclosure, trash enclosure someplace?
There are some
or
on
is
the
there
side.
existing?
Yeah. The funny thing is this site's been 90% done minus pads. And so there is a trash enclosure here, kind of as a shared trash enclosure for the whole complex.
We'll definitely think about generation from that many new tenant spots and being the type of use that you're anticipating on, you know, whether you need to get another enclosure in there someplace.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Yeah, just maybe more frequent pickup.
Yeah, we can do that too. It could be once a day if you want it to be.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Awesome. Hey, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
input.
And last but not least, design review fiscal year 2022, number 21, Brian Hallowell. Well, not last but least.
Hello, I'd like to thank everybody for hanging around and allowing us to present the project in front of you. And also, and I understand that you guys are very busy, and I just really appreciate all the help you've had, that you've given us for all these projects we have at the Riverside. It's been really good to work with you, so I appreciate it. So I'll pull up a couple visuals here. So I just go to pull up the documents from the application, I go to the city's website. Okay.
And then if you go to departments at top. And service.
Sorry.
Top one, there you go, and then the top one.
The top one.
Top one.
On your DSR FY 2022-21.
You said?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
And then you're gonna want to share the screen too, so go back
Okay.
to Zoom.
Okay. So this project that we're presenting in front of you is a multi-phase project for the Riverside Hotel. And let me see if I can find a good example of a visual here. So in this view right here is the courtyard portion of the Riverside Hotel. And the green belt is right where my cursor is. And it goes over to Talaya beyond this hotel wing over here. Talaya is down here towards the Whitewater Park and the bridge and some of the other projects we've talked about earlier today. And then this cruciform shaped building is the fitness center and the existing sandbar, the pool in the courtyard. And then right now this is a grassy area, and this is currently paved. So if I go to maps. So it currently has this paved form here in this pie wedge shape. And so essentially the challenge we have with this project is this original building here from back when this project was built in 69, early 70s, was designated as a utility plant, unfortunately. So what we have going on is we have this prime riverfront property right here with this sandbar restaurant for the length of this courtyard. And what currently exists there is a cooling tower, electric transformer, power lines, and then this underutilized laundry and fitness facility with restrooms. And then part of that are in the back of house, there's a pool equipment room, fire sprinkler reroute room from the two wings over here that the water lines, enter the room and then service the two wings. And then there's some additional mechanical and cooling tower equipment that is part of the function of this cooling tower. So a lot of the utilities are going to this central area and then being diverted to these far wings that were additions to the hotel back in the in its early days when it was the before it was the current Riverside Hotel. And so what the client would like to do is they would like to redo this sandbar restaurant and bring the patio seating, the activation, and all of those types of things over to the Riverside, the edge of the greenbelt. At the same time, they recognize that this portion of the greenbelt, because the current fence is essentially scribing the profile of the greenbelt that's right up next to the greenbelt, that there's some safety concerns that they have concerns with, and the frequency at which individuals cruise through here. We call it the freeway. And so what they would like to do is enhance this all with patio seating that is in this vicinity, and bring the utilities away from this edge and closer to the building. And in doing so, closer to the building, back and internal to the courtyard. In doing so, what we're proposing to do here is positioning a new stair and utility routing system that's coming out of this corner of the building, this existing stair. It's coming out of here, and we're going to use that to divert the utilities under the sidewalks. And then they're going to redo the stair because the current stair is just fairly distressed with some decomposing steel and those types of things. And then add an elevator to this enclosure, and then take the cooling tower that's right here and replace that with the new cooling tower up on top of this stair with an opaque screen that ideally is designed to have the clearances around it for airflow, but then will ideally mitigate sound encroaching onto the activities of the pool and activities at the outdoor venue, and then in any of the future restaurant activities. And the other elements that are involved with the relocation of the central utility functions will be located in a basement that will plane out with grade, roughly speaking. So the plan is to take the pool equipment, locate that down in this basement, and locate some of the other functions, some of the fire sprinkler routing, and the variety of functions like that in the basement here. And then up in this building here will be the electrical entrance for the building, including plans for or future load or capacity for the lighting and the operations of this atrium structure. Call it atrium structure, but it's actually just like a wedding trellis. We call it the River's Edge Terrace. And then there's a fire sprinkler room here with a chase that will bring equipment from the basement up, and then also get some equipment up onto the roof. But this enclosure is part of the phase one. So we're replacing the fire sprinkler lines, the fire sprinkler entrance to the property for these back wings, and also serving this structure here that is also being proposed as part of this design review application. And then the entrance for the electrical service. We are also taking the transformer and the power lines that are running along the greenbelt and diverting those to an underground coming from down this the driveway, and then going underneath the hotel and entering into this electrical service room. And that's part of an Idaho Power project. So the size of this facility here is sized in such a way to accommodate an enlarged pool area and heating capacity for the pool. And that will be part of the phase 2 of this project. So I did have a question from design review prior to this meeting about the size of the project. We got confirmation that The size of the project is 14.4% of the overall parcel, the overall project, hotel site, just to answer that question. And this River's Edge terrace structure will be comprised of sandstone clad pillars with a steel structure, HSS steel frame, and then a CPI daylighting U-light greenhouse skylight outdoor structure ceiling. It's a type of a Lexan or polycarbonate that's almost like a board and batten with the battens being made of aluminum framing. And we are diverting the drainage for that over onto this line, and then hitting a storm drain system that will enter into a storm drainage retention area underneath this plaza and seepage bed. This building here, see if I have. So the materials on these right here, on these two buildings will be a dark midnight black masonry, which is similar to the masonry that's on the front of the building on our current pool building over here, and this building, the maintenance and laundry building for the hotel that's facing Chinden. So we're going to use that to dress up this corner, and then have a sandstone inlay with adhered masonry to get a certain effect along this pathway. And then the material up above is going to be a wood cladding of Japanese cedar that's thermally modified with a dark tone. It's an authentic Shishugiban because it's good at resisting weather and has a natural patina to it that ages well. And so we're going to use that up here, and we're potentially going to use that here, or possibly considering doing a sacrificial board and batten hardy cladding on this in the near term, leading up to the phase 2, which will begin after next summer and starting the fall of 2023. Here's a look at the stair addition that we have. Again, the height of this is being driven by positioning of that cooling tower, and trying to get that out of sight and out of mind, but hopefully getting that to effectively go away from the experience of the activated courtyard spaces. And we're working on getting some hold on a second. Right here. So we're hoping on utilizing this stair to get prospect views for visitors of the hotel. But essentially, when folks are entering the courtyard space through this entrance 11, they will have the ability to look out from this vantage point and see the pool as part of their destination, or see the sandbar as part of their destination for a restaurant activity, or see the wedding venue or the event venue before they head down. And let's see, I think I covered a majority of the materials on this. Materials for this small building here and this small building. So the plan is that the utilities for this building will be replaced with the subgrade basement, and then there will be a membrane placed over that, some temporary fencing for the season that it's in the interim, waiting for the next phase. And then the materials for these again will be brick and Shishugiban cladding. This will remain functional because it will keep a season operational for this sandbar outdoor patio space and the poolside bar, in addition to this pool. And then once these are on board, and in 2023, fall of 2023, this building can then be taken down and replaced with the phase 2 project. So it's a stair stepping or leapfrog approach to getting these things implemented. So I think that's all I have for now. If there's any questions?
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
No, I don't have anything right quite yet.
So say if we don't do the phasing of the DR, if we do it all in one package, how long does the approval last?
The committee probably can't hear you, but the
Oh.
question is how long the DR lasts, the approval, and it's 1 year. We have conditioned certain applications to have longer as a specific condition of approval, so we could look at that.
Yeah, so that was one of our concerns was the duration of which a DR approval would stand, because since we're specifically seeking to not start the second phase until after the pool and the summer season ends. And so it sounds like 12 months is the duration. And if the work commences, say for instance, if the two phases were blended together as one, and they were gone through the process and approved, and they were to break ground and build the phase one, would that then be considered extending that duration? Because that would probably commence in spring of 2020.
The way that we have building permits, so as long as the building permit is pulled, I don't know why code doesn't allow on the other side, but as long as there's activity, it's 6 months from your last activity. So if you pull the building permit and then you are calling in inspections, you could do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Josh Russell with Cushing Terrell. I think our biggest thing is we want to make sure that we get construction started honestly in September. We're already getting ready to go in for a demo permit for the utilities because they have to get that done. But when we come in, so our plan, if there aren't too many more comments, I think Hannah's staff report was pretty straightforward, the tree mitigation. And then just the facade variation where I think you're only 2 comments kind of in the whole staff report. We can address the tree mitigation, but when we come in for DR, we're hoping we can submit this actually this week to get on the next agenda, just to keep pushing it as fast as we can. We will have slides that show the phase 2, just so that the committee can kind of start seeing how the whole area is tying together. Because as Brian mentioned, there's a whole brand new sandbar, a brand new outdoor pool that's covered, and multiple bodies of water. So it's kind of putting it into a resort campus type thing. So we will show the committee what phase 2 is going to look like. We just don't want it full on public record because it's not part necessarily of this DR phase.
And I think, Josh, that addressed one of my concerns is what does the greater scope look like? Because, you're basically proposing, these utility structures in the middle of a public space visible from the green belt, and those theoretically are going away. So we kind of need to see when they go away, how they go away. So I think that you mentioned that we will see some of that in the public hearing portion. So that was one of my biggest concerns is what's it all look like down the road if we put this, temporary on it. What's it look like when it's final?
Yeah. Do you have a way I can plug in a jump drive? I can show you an image of it. I understand the concerns fully. Okay, so this is the full picture. What we're looking at is we're looking at widening the green belt with a textured pathway off to the side, so that folks can shimmy off of the pathway when there are bicycles that are not slowing down. Along the green belt, we are basically creating a sawtooth type formation with landscaped and planter sort of areas of refuge, essentially, off of that green belt if needed, but essentially creating a texture that's has a little more undulation to it, so that it gives the impression that one should slow down and be able to look around, or if they want to stop and take a peek at what's happening with the activity on the green belt or on the patio edge, they can do so. We feel it will encourage a bit of slowing. We're going to maintain the location of the stage here where it currently is. And the pool back here, this is an older version of the pool because it's been in the process of design. So it will essentially have a splash pad in this corner for kids with a shallow, I think it's about a 1 foot deep shallow section. And then it will have an adult portion over here with a beach on it. And so there'll be 2 bodies over there, then a main body right here with laps going in this direction, and a beach sitting relatively in the same position that we have this ledge right here. And then there's this it's structure over these 2 warm pools. And so essentially for that resort type feel, the owner would like to establish a warm pool and then a hot tub of more significant size, and then have a drop down seating area within that space. So this will be something that can have curtains around it to contain some of the steam and some of that hot springs type feel. And then this material up above will be the similar material to what we have over on this River's Edge Terrace, which is a polycarbonate U-formed. So it's essentially, like I said, a standing seam roofing that drains in a certain direction. So it will have like a translucent feel to it. And this one was most efficient to do a simple gable form, but we're looking at potentially having a sliding type opening on the top of these, so that the space can open up and evacuate some of the heat as needed and feel a little more open. And then this sandbar pool or sandbar restaurant right here off of the pool is essentially working to maintain a low sight line from this courtyard area, so that folks from here could still get the presence of the tree line and the river from the courtyard looking out. And so we have the bulk of our building volume pushed over into this corner, and this is where we have the kitchen down underneath this single story structure. And then this is that form that was the original electrical and fire sprinkler room. And so this will be surrounded by the kitchen, and the restrooms are back in here that are accessible by this River's Edge Terrace and also accessible by patrons of the restaurant. And then this portion right here will have an open stair immediately inside the main entry. So the main entry to this will be down this walkway off of this circular courtyard. You can't see very well in this view, and entering the restaurant off of this node right here. They want to divert traffic from entering haphazardly off of the greenbelt and get them in a controlled fashion around here, or entering along this sidewalk adjacent to the River's Edge Terrace and around to the central node here. And then the restaurant will have floor to ceiling glazing with an adequate overhang to get transparency, to foster transparency through the building and visibility of the activity. And then something I think when we looked at this project probably is about 2018 with you guys, Jenna, you were there. We were talking about potential for providing shading devices or patio covers out there. And what we're looking at is doing a sleeved patio cover that you could essentially remove out of the sleeve these shade sail poles there, with the concern being because the 5500 CFS high water line is represented roughly by this line right here where my cursor is. So we're trying to keep anything that would be considered quote unquote structure outside of that, and keeping that so it's like essentially furniture to that effect. And this raised stair portion right here will have bifolding doors with what they're calling an eagle's nest bar with a decent overhang there for protection from the elements, and opening out to the exterior. And this will be rooftop patio. I'm not showing furnishings up there quite yet, but the idea is that we'll have a rooftop patio that's less than 3,000 square feet to mitigate the requirement for an elevator for this restaurant, just because the restaurant needs to have higher than either a 14-foot or higher floor-to-floor ceiling, or floor-to-floor height. And unfortunately, the stair over here serving the building the building has a 10-foot high floor-to-floor. So we had a real challenge trying to get the elevator to function for both, and we had height clearances and those types of things that just made it a real challenge to do that. So we decided to just utilize the elevator where they truly need it for the hotel, and then have equal facilitation to where we have a bar function at grade, and we just have an additional bar function and patio function at the elevated height there on the rooftop. This is a secondary egress, and we're utilizing that corner for some identity signage for the building. And then we'll have this will be just dining area inside that will open out to the patio.
Right. And I think that moving the application forward with just the elements that you've described originally, and not this full rendering that you have up now. I think that in my mind, I was just trying to justify, like, and maybe there's some condition in this phase one that says it's going to get all covered up later, because how we look at that elevator shaft room is completely different if we're seeing it from the green belt versus it's tucked behind this entire restaurant building. So I think there's ways to address that, and I was just kind of wondering what we're going to see in the future from the green belt and public access, and this has answered that question. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it really shows the context of what we're dealing with, and that those elements, the long-term goal for those elements that are really kind of removed, and it definitely makes it a little bit easier to understand how to deal with the first phase one, having a clearer picture. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So are there any other concerns that we should consider as we proceed?
I don't have any. I guess I do have one question on just a little thing on that stair tower element. Can you just talk about what those panelized components are, and where do they kind of the CMU panels there in that tall structure, and how that really ties into something? Is it something you're pulling from of the existing design, or it just I guess it just seems a little out of place, that treatment there.
This right here, yes.
Yeah, with those two recessed panels, it seems a little out of place. I was just wondering what the thought was.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so so on the existing hotel, let's see if this one will hold still for a second. Okay, so this right here, this patio right here is called the sandstone terrace, and it has sandstone elements that frame that patio edge and the landscaping. And then the fencing, which is going to be retooled as part of our future pool, has sandstone pillars, true sandstone blocks, and then there's ornamental metal fence in between those. And then this River's Edge Terrace will have pillars that are sandstone adhered to that. And the existing hotel right here has a sandstone water feature, and then it has sandstone pillars supporting this portico share. And then there's some sandstone elements here. My point is the sandstone is part of an accent theme to the hotel and in a controlled fashion. It's not overtly used. And so with the design of this, what we were looking at doing, and I don't have the exhibit for this, but if I can talk about it real quick. So there's this pathway from this node over to the River's Edge Terrace that will get a significant amount of traffic in a certain event. But the concern that we have is the nature of this patio use, this River's Edge Terrace patio assembly area, is that it will be for wedding ceremonies or conferences that are outdoor. And the nature of the use with the sandbar patio is that it's music based type of theme. So they have live acts quite frequently. And then also with the pool, obviously there's a lot of activity and noise that comes with the pool. So what we were doing is we were looking at positioning an inlay in this masonry portion that's essentially right from this edge of my cursor to this edge of the cursor, that will have a textured type of baffles of fins that are adhered masonry that are about 2 to 3 inches high, and they create they have a spacing to them. So you're effectively creating a sound baffle like you would have in a recording studio or something to that effect. And we've done some modeling where we've looked at point sources coming from this, where my cursor is here, and point sources come from this cursor location roughly here, and seeing how those particles can best be dithered or reduced for the sound transferring through. The concern is that the sound transferring over the building will move over the building faster than it will resonate between the two buildings, and you'll get an echo effect that will be distracting to the event of a wedding and at that peak early evening hour. So we've been doing some studying. What we discovered is that if we can do some sort of articulation of the masonry with fins in a vertical sense, we can help diminish that sound and baffle it to a certain effect, and it would just only help. And in doing so, we're looking at incorporating the sandstone material that we have in this brick inlay for that. And that's why we have that right there.
Okay. I think that's kind of a kind of a good spot or an opportunity for some kind of an element or artistic feature or something like that, as it's in that pathway of all that. And so if there's, you kind of explained it, the acoustical treatment and stuff like that, it makes sense.
Yeah,
it just looked a little foreign to me, what was going on there with the two squares, the horizontal piece and the rest of that, and just was curious as to how that factored into everything.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. And then the Shushugiban product is essentially this product right here, the Gendai. And there's currently some of this on the pool building that's under construction, almost finished in front of the building. So it's essentially a thermally modified Japanese cedar. So it's ultra kiln dried.
Yeah, I think it looks like an exciting project.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I don't have anything else.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I had misspoken before. Last but not least.
Aha.
On to the Casino Beach modification. And I believe that Michael Slavin's on the line.
Yep. Design committee, nice to see you again.
Should I stop sharing?
Yeah.
And that is a really cool project. Hurry up, guys. For the Riverside, that's great. Cool. Nice to see you again. Thank you for having us. We came back, I know certainly for two of the planned little standalone buildings at Casino Beach, after further rationalization, working out bedrooms, it made sense to add a floor, but also put more articulation and more outdoor space as you move up. So I wanted to present that to you. Jenah, I'm a little bit new at this. Was a package circulated ahead of time? I'm going to go ahead and share visuals too, but just want to see where I'm starting at.
Yeah, the submittals were put online as soon as we received them.
Okay.
The committee should have seen them already.
Okay, great. To orient you again, is that I'm sure just for the specific structures, just want to make sure. Here we go. So there's a couple permissions you need to give. I believe I'm sharing. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So where you see numbers 7 and 8 called out, this is where the first unit we're going to look at, called the anchored unit, are located. 7's a little misleading. We reduced by 1 anchor unit in this location. This is actually just behind or just to the south of the previous project that you looked at, Pigeonhole, which faces the green belt. The second one is number 8 for the site plan for the original submittal. And then just to give you a sense of what it looks like from a render perspective, you're looking at this unit here and this unit here. The former elevation, as you can see here, and this is actually, we're lucky enough to have 2 interested buyers, so we're somewhat reacting to their wishes as well, is that you would square this off and add a full new story and then have just a doghouse and a roof deck. We wanted to somewhat, so you'll see that the materials are ultimately the same. Cool thing is we're actually adding more glass and we're adding more outdoor spaces, as you can see here in these patios. And this is, just a roof deck really with a doghouse structure on the top, but tried to keep some of the language and silhouette. What was the ultimate idea. And we're really reacting to the buyers saying that they wanted a proper home office and also wanted more outdoor space. We liked it quite a bit just because you see again contextually here, you're adding more animation to what's really become more of a wooner, if you want to call it that, where Pigeonholes here. We really want to encourage pedestrian walkway along here and then down into this greater courtyard, we're calling it, which is a public access area. Of course, we have these little gallery spaces on the front of the townhome. So we like the idea of more animation here and more animation on both sides of this building as well. So net, really the same materials, tried to stick to the same silhouette and added more glass. We did add a story, but on top of that, we just have a roof deck with the doghouse.
Any thoughts?
Well, so do you show that anywhere in a 3D image where it's contextual with the rest of the development, or not yet?
We haven't. I mean, if that's something that you'd like to see, I'm sure we could make that happen. We just wanted to get past this hurdle first, I suppose.
And then do you have a 3D in this package of the entry? Street front entry?
Or is it the same design?
It's a great question, Derek. I know we were addressing the entry. Yeah, the designs are going to be in the same spot that you reviewed a couple weeks ago. Ultimately on the site plan, you'll have an entry that's on this side. It's, varies a little bit. And then you'll have an entry here on car on these two.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We wanted to keep the footprints exactly the same. We just added some volume going up.
Well, it's kind of hard to see how the entrance is because we're not seeing that, and kind of understanding how that entry at the main level component is. You got elevation there maybe that shows it.
You know, unfortunately, I think on this rendering, these are the only ones that we have are here, which is really unfortunate now that you're asking the question. So you see steel plate canopy, entry will be over here. I don't think
But that's it there on the right side of that page, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I think my gut reaction to that is where's the windows on the street front?
Yeah.
Okay. Entry. And I just want to look at this really quick to see. This is a little bit tight. It's definitely more our problem than yours. Stairs here, entry bath. So I mean,
Yeah, that's.
You can definitely punch windows in there. There's a way to work that out.
I guess I would like to see a little more articulation there with added fenestrations. What can you flip back to where you guys ended up with the previous 2-story and what the entrance elements and glazing that we had on that lower level?
Yeah, and these, oh man.
Those aren't even the final ones, are they?
No, they're not. I wonder if I have. Sorry about this. Let me get this off screen. I'll look for it really quick. Here we go. See if they're in this response. Now it's just taking forever to load. Oh, cool. Okay. Sorry, it's just taking a minute to load. Everybody's watching videos in the hot heat. And so what we had was, this is the unit adjacent car. And so we added an entry here. And I believe this is the window along the stairway in a bathroom window. So we'd be doing, we'd have a similar solution here. We just use that for both actually. They're flipped, right? Because the garage entry is on the separate side, but the footprint would be exactly the same.
Yeah, I think that's the only piece of the modification. I'm not too concerned about the height, just given what the rest of this project, the height and massing of all the different components. But that it feels a little fortified on that base level.
Agreed. It's kind of ugly, actually. Not a much at it. So it worked.
So if you guys, I think that's the part that it needs some work.
Okay.
Yep. And even that stairwell, I mean, stairwells sometimes can have really cool windows kind of marching up the stairs. And it seems like in this house particularly, you come in and you go up the stairs. So it's kind of it's not a private area. It's that stair isn't going from, master bedroom to living. It's basically an extension of your entry.
Mhm.
So I think there's an opportunity for some windows to come into that stairwell to kind of bring the outside in and bring the inside out.
Yeah, bringing some glass down on that corner and really creating something special for that. How that the movement vertically there, I think will help.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. The cool thing is that at this stage, it's pretty easy to add. So we'll be happy to do that.
And like you said, the footprint didn't change. So the circulation and pedestrians and parking and all that is a non-issue. It's just more square footage in the same program, in the same scope.
Yep, exactly. And we like it a little bit. Those two are sitting down in context to the other units, and they'll give them a chance to get some waterfront views, which is pretty cool. But that's an easy change for us, and appreciate the feedback. We'll punch that up quite a bit more. So,
okay.
So how does that work? Do we make our revisions and then resubmit and come back and chat again?
Yeah, because this was I guess that's a good question for staff, because is this just a discussion and we can say have staff look at it, or what was the plan with this? Does this need to be a formal hearing?
So this was a discussion to help satisfy that condition. I think it's 22 in the decision document, where there were particular units that didn't meet code standards and they just weren't developed enough. So we're kind of backpedaling and having these conversations. It doesn't need to be a formal decision as far as like a decision document. It's really just checking off the box for their next step, which would be the construction plan approvals and their final plat.
So who's gonna then, would it be just a staff review to look at this component that we're talking about addressing, this entry and more glazing and that treatment? Is that something that staff's okay reviewing, or do we need to somehow get that back in front of us, or what?
So we could go either way. I feel like tonight you provided enough direction. If you wanted to get more particular, you could, and I could look at those plans. But ultimately, I wouldn't be the one looking at those building permit documents. It would be our assistant planner, Betty Gum.
Well, somehow I think it needs to, what that design element gets finalized to needs to have some type of a buy-off from a planning standpoint.
Yeah, and we could easily have them come back in a few months' time or weeks or however long it takes, as another discussion item, just to be safe and make sure that they're hitting all those comments that you suggested.
And question, this site is its own site, right? It's an individual residential lot. Is that correct, Michael? You can just nod your head.
Yes.
Okay. So if this was removed from the master plan, we wouldn't even see it, right? So as far as it going from a 2.5 or 3-story building to a 4-story with rooftop deck, that's really kind of, I guess what I'm saying is we're not negating a public process because this is an individual residential lot that would not even be seen by design review if it just came in on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If it was just on its own lot, as if the plat had already been recorded, it would have been a residential building permit.
Yeah.
That wouldn't
Got
go
it.
to design review.
Got it. Yep, we see that.
this something that you'd like to see again to make sure that the details are met?
I personally don't need to. I think that we've given enough direction with more glazing, and I think one iteration previously had glazing in the bath, and now we're suggesting glazing in the stairwell to, you know, provide a little bit eyes on the street, but also to make that pedestrian level facade more interesting. I think that's enough, and when staff sees it, they'll know if that works or not.
Yeah, I don't need to see it again either. I think that I think we've provided enough direction, and I think that they can interpret that and come up with a solution that'll provide what we're looking for down there.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then we'll look at it, or Hannah will look at it when it comes in.
Great, thank you. Both of you. And then Jenah, Hanna, I just want to make sure that we're addressing anchor and tandem units. So with the tandem units, fellas, I think it's pretty much a strict interpretation of what was presented in design review is actually what we're moving forward with construction plans. So what we're looking at now for the site plan or program is number 6. There were 2 units above a small commercial space that faces 34th Street. And then we'll go ahead and look at renderings of what was proposed. So this was the tandem structure. You see there's a little commercial space, I think it's 804 square feet downstairs, 2 garages to serve the 2 residential units above and a roof deck. And for a side-by-side comparison, I'll go ahead and take you to what we're working on for working drawings, and I'll flip back and do a little comparison. But I feel that I'm not sure why this got submitted, honestly. So I hate to waste anybody's time, but Jenah, Hanna, is there any express reason why this building was submitted in our process for design review again?
I don't recall off the top of my head. It was just submitted, so I kept it in the packet.
Okay, so
because all I can recall is that it was the riverfront, the anchor units, and Hannah's unit that needed to come back, and it was the anchor units and the river townhome that needed to face the street as conditions. So I don't remember if there was a condition regarding these tandem units. I almost don't think so. But.
Okay, so this may have been a mistake, but the good news is we're building most of what we planned. So that's good. Okay, well then we're finished for now. And then just for clarification, since we're on it, with the riverfront townhome, we had one discrepancy. And my understanding was, maybe it was incorrect, is that we were going to fix this detail so it's very clear that there was an entry facing the street. And a question would be, I'm being a little opportunistic here, is that would that be something that we could satisfy with planning staff, that we make sure we make a direct connection?
Yeah, I think that's how that ended up, was that we weren't going to see any of that again.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. So Hanna, we're working out the plans for this, and we'll put a direct connection. That's an easy fix for us, especially how this unit's oriented towards the public street. And we should have something to you by the end of the week, this week.
Looks good, exciting.
We're getting there. We can't wait. We just cut down a bunch of trees. It looks ugly. I can't wait to plant new ones and get this thing going. So bear with us. Cool. Well, thank you all so much for all your time and your help with this. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, see you later.
You bet.
All right, take care.
And then the committee had asked for updates on council actions. I know it's 6 o'clock on a meeting that was requested to end at 5. Do you want to do that still?
Yes, quickly.
Okay.
I think so. Yep.
The first, just an update on the Petra Point subdivision. The council received a split recommendation, one from planning and zoning for approval and denial from the design review committee. And the city council sustained the design review recommendation. And so Petra Point was denied ultimately. And then for the Searle Mitchell Live Work Create, they did repeal the ordinance. It's had its first reading of a repeal. And the reasoning, and from my point of view, a recap from their meeting was because it's been around for a number of years, since 2007, and there hasn't been a lot of applications that utilize it. And at least one council member voiced wanting to see design standards and then like a use standard. And there was a feeling that there's enough tools within the base code to implement the neighborhood. And they noted that they respect and honor the branding, and that will remain, that the neighborhood will remain the Searle Mitchell Live Work Create. And there was also another comment about not wanting to have to fix a fix. And so it's looking towards the overall code rewrite process to look at the design and the use and implement through that process. It is online if you're interested in more detail than that. If you go to the Garden City main page, there's the YouTube link just right up. There's the little icons at the top of the page, and their discussion on repealing it, the discussion's right around 2.5 hours in. So I don't know where it starts, probably around 2 hours in or so.
And what's the
7/25, so July 25th.
and what's the discussion or intention of council and the mayor of code rewrite that may include some of those things that have now been repealed? What's the timeline on that?
Right now, there's been kind of the less intense type of code right. So things that are out there that either need to be done immediately. So we've seen the floodplain come through. We've seen like the cell tower stuff that are a little bit more immediate. There does need to be quite a bit of outreach and work, in my opinion, to do the deep dive into code. An example, I don't know the exact timeline for Garden Cities, but Boise's a year in, and they stated that they're at least another year out and really looking at their ordinance. I think that Ada County also is doing an ordinance rewrite right now and looking at other areas within Ada County, including those two. It will assist Garden City and potentially maybe moving a little bit quicker because they're looking at some similar things. For example, Boise is looking at rezoning the TOD nodes along State Street. So I suspect that they will create a whole TOD ordinance, and I would suspect that Garden City would want to look at that pretty closely to see if it aligns with what Garden City wants to implement, especially since the TODs are shared on State Street, but that potentially could apply to locations on Chinden as well. And then we've already done the parking survey. I suspect council wants that expedited. So I suspect that'll come out sooner than later as a piece before the whole ordinance is looked at. But we do need to get some surveys out and figure out what the community wants to see looked at in the the code as well. Right now, I can say right now it's being done in-house. And so there are some legal interns that have been doing work, as you know, you've seen them come to this committee. But part of the constraint right now is it's in-house work, whereas it would be a little bit quicker if there's a little bit more capacity right now. We've been pretty busy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate all that you do. Have a good couple of weeks.
You bet.
All right. We'll
Have a
see
good
you.
evening. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.